These are your notes for Unit 7, Day 3 of Algebra 1. If you would like to see the warm-up, the review question, or any homework questions we covered in class today, just look at the finished notes. So today we are going to factor trinomials again, but this time they're going to be of the form ax squared plus bx plus c. So the one difference is there will be a coefficient in front of the x squared term. You will also be able to factor out a GCF first from that trinomial and then factor the remaining polynomial. And then we're going to be able to factor perfect square trinomials, so what they are and how to factor them. So factoring trinomials of the form ax squared plus bx plus c. So let's multiply one of these out first. So if I took 3x plus 4 times x plus 3, so 3x plus 4 times x plus 3, we would get 3x squared plus 4x plus 9x plus 12. So this would end up being 3x squared plus 13x plus 12. So now our objective is going to be, how do we factor that trinomial back into the two parentheses that it came from? All right. So there's a couple options on how to do this. I think the easiest option is going to be factoring by grouping. So for this trinomial to be able to factor at all, what you do is you take the a term times the c term. So remember, this is ax squared plus bx plus c. So you take the a term times the c term. So if I took the a term times the c term, I'd take 3 times 12, I get 36. And then you take the b term, so the b term is 13. And you think, can you multiply to 36 and can you add to 13? So can you multiply to 36 and can you add to 13? Is that possible? Yes, it is. It's positive 9 and positive 4. So, and if you notice, those are going to be these two terms inside of your box. So it's not going to work the same way that it worked last class, but what we're going to do is we're going to take that trinomial, 3x squared plus 13x plus 12, and we're going to break up that middle term so we can factor by grouping. So 3x squared plus 13x plus 12. We're going to break that up so it becomes 4 terms. So 3x squared stays the same, and then that 13x we're going to break up into 9x and 4x. So plus 9x plus 4x. Notice I didn't change the problem because 9x plus 4x is 13x, and then we still have that plus 12. So notice now we have 4 terms, so we can do that process of factoring by grouping. So group together the first 2, group together the second 2, and put a plus sign in the middle. And so if I do this, I get, pull out the 3x, and then we have x plus 3. And then we can pull out the 4, and we have x plus 3. And notice those two parentheses are now the same. So you can pull out those two parentheses, x plus 3, and we're left with the 3x and the plus 4. And so if I multiplied that back out, I would get x plus 3 times 3x plus 4. Another way of doing this is you can guess and check. So if we made our box like we did on our previous problems, I know that the first box needs to be 3x squared, and that last box needs to be positive 12. But now notice, I know I need an x and an x, but I need to multiply to 3x squared. So I know I need a 3x and a 1x. These two boxes right here become 13x. So I know that I need two numbers that would make the 13, but it would be 3 times it and then 1 times it. So we've got to be careful this time because it's not just a straight multiply to 12 and add to 13 this time. It's a little bit different. So it's a lot of guessing and checking until you get the numbers that work. And so it would end up being the 4x, it would end up being the 9x and the 4x. And so it would end up being 4 and 3 to make this work out the way that you would want it to. All right, so when we factor this back out, we get x plus 3 times 3x plus 4. Another way of doing it, I'm just going to show you all the possible ways. So if we started with 3x squared plus 13x plus 12, the first step is always going to be the same. We're going to take the a times the c. And so if I took a times c, I would get 36. So I need two numbers that multiply to 36. And then you still need to add to the middle term b. So we need two numbers that add to 13. And so the two numbers that would multiply to 36 and add to 13 would be the 9 and the 4. Positive 9 and positive 4. Now, another way of doing these problems, and you can only do this after you've factored out a greatest common factor if there is one, you would take the a term, and in this case the a is 3, and you make it the denominator for both of these fractions and then reduce. 4 over 3 doesn't reduce, so that means that that makes the parentheses 4, I guess it's not going to be the denominator, it's going to be the numerator. So we've got 9 and 4. We make the 3 the numerator on both of these. And so the 3 over 4x doesn't reduce, so this becomes 3x plus 4 inside the parentheses. The 3 over 9 does reduce into 1 over 3, so this is going to become 1x plus 3. And notice those are the two parentheses that we wanted. That's a third option for doing these. So let's look at our next one. 4x minus 5 times 5x plus 3. So if I multiplied this out, 4x minus 5 and 5x plus 3, I would get 20x squared minus 25x plus 12x minus 15, which would become 20x squared minus 13x minus 15. So this one's a big one. So again, we can try and factor by grouping. Sorry, this shouldn't be squared. This should just be x. So 20x squared minus 13x minus 15. So if we want to factor by grouping, we take the a term times the c term. So we're going to take 20 times negative 15, which is negative 300. So I need two terms. When I multiply them, I get negative 1300. And when I add them together, I get negative 13. So what multiplies to negative 300 and adds to negative 13? So negative 300, let's do divided by 10. That would be negative 30 and positive 10, so that's negative 20. So it's got to be bigger than that. So let's do negative 300 divided by 15. That would give me 5. So negative 300 divided by 12. That would be right. So I need negative 25 and positive 12. So negative 25 times positive 12 is negative 300, and negative 25 plus positive 12 is negative 13. So if we did this with the factoring by grouping method, I would take the 20x squared minus 13x minus 15, and I would break up that negative 13. So it would become 20x squared, then minus 25x, plus 12x minus 15. Factor by grouping. Group together the first two parentheses, group together the second two parentheses. Factor out a 5x, and you would have 4x minus 5, and then factor out a 3, and you would have 4x minus 5. The two parentheses are the same, so it worked. And so we would have, pull out the 5x or 4x minus 5, because that's the common factor, and then you would have the 5x plus 3. And so that is what this trinomial would factor into, 4x minus 5 times 5x plus 3. So that's option 1. Or remember, once you get to this position right here, you can take the leading coefficient, in this case it was 20, and make it the numerator, so 20 and 20, and then reduce each of those fractions. So 20 over 12 reduces to, they're both divisible by 4, and so this would become 5/3. So this would become 5x plus 3. And then 20 over 25 are both divisible by 5, so this would become 4 over negative 5. So this one would become 4x minus 5. And notice those are the two parentheses as well. All right, so that is factoring trinomials of the form ax squared plus bx plus c. Let's look at some more examples. So 3x squared plus 11x plus 6. So again, the first step is you take the a term times the c term. So we're going to take 3 times 6, and 3 times 6 is 18. So I need two numbers that multiply to 18 and then add to the middle term. So I need two numbers that multiply to 18 and add to 11. So what multiplies to 18 and adds to 11? That would be positive 9 and positive 2. So let's do factoring by grouping. So 3x squared plus 11x plus 6. We can break up that middle term using the 9 and the 2. So this would be plus 9x plus 2x plus 6. And then factor by grouping. So group together the first two terms, group together the second two terms, plus sign in the middle. And we would pull out the 3x, and we would have x plus 3. Pull out the 2, and you would have x plus 3. And now notice those two parentheses are the same, so we can factor out the x plus 3, and we are left with 3x plus 2. And so that problem would factor into x plus 3 times 3x plus 2. Or once you get it into that form right there, remember you can take the a term and make it the numerator in both of these places. And so this would be 3 over 9 and 3 over 2. This one doesn't reduce, so it would be 3x plus 2. This one reduces into 1 over 3, so this would become x plus 3. And notice those are the two parentheses. All right, let's look at the next one. 2x squared plus 13x minus 7. So again, start by taking a times c, so that 2 times the negative 7. So we want two numbers that when I multiply them, I get negative 14. And then when they add, you get the middle term. So when I add them, I get positive 13. So what multiplies to negative 14 and adds to positive 13? That would be positive 14 and negative 1. So let's factor by grouping. So 2x squared plus 13x minus 7. We're going to break up that middle term. So it's going to be 2x squared, and then it's positive 14x and negative 1x, and then minus 7. And then with factoring by grouping, group the first two, group the second two, plus sign in the middle. So 2x squared and 14x have a common factor of 2x. And I'm left with x plus 7. Negative 1x and negative 7 have a common factor of negative 1. And then I'd have an x plus 7 when I factor out the negative 1. So now they both have an x plus 7, so I can factor out an x plus 7. And then we would have the 2x minus 1. So this trinomial would factor into x plus 7 times 2x minus 1. Or you can get to this step, and once you get to that step, you could take that coefficient of 2 and put it as the numerator for both of these, and then reduce. So this would be 1 over 7. So that would go into the parentheses 1x plus 7. And then that one's already reduced, so it would be 2x minus 1. Again, that second method only works if you've already factored out the greatest common factor from all three terms, if there is one. All right, so let's try the next one. 15x squared minus 22x plus 18. So we'll take the 15 times the 8, which is 120. So I need to find two numbers that when I multiply them, I get 120. And when I add them, I get negative 22. So 120 divided by 20, I get 60. So that's 2, divided by 20, I get 6. So that's too big. So 120 divided by 18. That's not perfect. 120 divided by 15. So 15 and 8 would make 23. 120 divided by 3. 120 divided by 4. 120 divided by 5. 120 divided by 6. 120 divided by 7. 120 divided by 8. So this isn't factorable. So there are no two numbers that when I multiply them, I get positive 120. And then when I add them together, I get negative 120, or sorry, negative 22. So this is not factorable. All right, let's look at the next one. 4x squared plus 11x minus 3. So we're going to take 4 times negative 3, and we would get negative 12. So I need two numbers. When I multiply them, I get negative 12. And when I add them, I get positive 11. So that would be positive 12 and negative 1. So factor by grouping, 4x squared plus 11x minus 3. Break up that middle term. So 4x squared plus 12x minus 1x minus 3. Group together the first two, group together the second two, plus sign in the middle. That guy needs an x. So this would be 4x and then x plus 3. And then you can factor out a negative 1 and x plus 3. And then you can factor out the x plus 3, and then you have 4x minus 1. So this would factor into x plus 3 times 4x minus 1. Or you can take that guy right there, make it the numerator. And so this one would be 4x minus 1. This one reduces to 1 over 3, so that would be x plus 3. And there you go. All right, we've got 10x squared minus xy minus 3y squared. So now we've got to be careful, because remember when we did this? In my first box, I need a 10x squared, and in that last box, I need negative 3y squared, so I need an x and an x and a y and a y. So I've got to be careful with my parentheses. So we can still do this though. 10 times negative 3, I need two numbers. When I multiply them, I get negative 30. And then that middle term is a negative 1. So I need to add to negative 1. So what multiplies to negative 30 and adds to negative 1? That would be negative 6 and positive 5. So if I factor by grouping, 10x squared minus 1xy minus 3y squared, that middle term will break up into negative 6xy and positive 5xy, and then minus 3y squared. And so now we can just factor by grouping. So group together the first two, group together the second two, plus sign in the middle. So I can pull out a 2x from the first one, and I'm left with 5x minus 3y. And I can pull out a y from the next one, and I'm left with 5x minus 3y. Those two parentheses are the same, so I can factor it out, 5x minus 3y. And then I'm left with 2x plus y. So this would factor into 5x minus 3y times 2x plus y. Or if I do the original method, or the other method, 10 and 10. So this would reduce to 2 over 1, and this would reduce to 5 over negative 3. But now you've got to be careful, because we need the x and the y. So it'll be 5x minus 3y and 2x plus 1y. So you just have to be careful when there's multiple variables involved. All right, so 21x squared plus 11xy minus 2y squared. So a times c, I would get multiply to negative 42 and add to positive 11. So what would multiply to negative 42 and add to positive 11? So let's do 42 divided by 3, and I would get 14 and 3. So if I do positive 14 and negative 3, those would multiply to negative 42, and 14 plus negative 3 is negative 11. So factoring by grouping, we would do 21x squared plus 11xy minus 2y squared. Let's break up that middle term. So we do 21x squared plus 14xy minus 3xy minus 2y squared. Group the first two parentheses, group the second two, and then plus sign in the middle. And I could pull out a 7x, and I'd be left with 3x plus 2y. And then I can pull out a negative y, and I'd be left with 3x plus 2y. And notice it worked. So pull out the 3x plus 2y, and then times 7x minus y. So this would factor into 3x plus 2y, and then 7x minus y. Or you can take that 21 and put it as both numerators, and this would be 7 over negative 1, so this would be 7x minus 1y. And then this would be 3 over 2, so this would be 3x plus 2y. So that is factoring with the ax squared plus bx plus c when there's two variables involved. All right, we have 3x to the fourth minus 10x squared minus 8. Again, it's a trinomial, so we can take the a times the c. And so I need two numbers. When I multiply them, I get negative 24. When I add them, I get negative 10. So that would be negative 12 and positive 2. So factoring by grouping, 3x to the fourth minus 10x squared minus 8. Break up the middle term. So we would have 3x to the fourth minus 12x squared plus 2x squared minus 8. And so group the first two, group the second two, plus sign in the middle. We can take out a 3x squared this time, and we'd be left with x squared minus 4. And we can take out a positive 2, and we'd be left with x squared minus 4. And so we would have 3x squared plus 2 times x squared minus 4. Go ahead and pause the video and see if you can try number 2. All right, 2 times negative 7 is negative 14. So can you find two numbers? When you multiply them, you get negative 14. And if you add them, you get negative 5. That'd be negative 7 and positive 2. So 2x to the fourth minus 5x squared minus 7. You'd get 2x to the fourth minus 7x squared plus 2x squared minus 7. Group the first two, group the second two, plus sign in the middle. And we would get x squared and then 2x squared minus 7. And then the second two, you can factor out a 1 because that's their greatest common factor. And you'd be left with 2x squared minus 7. So pull out the 2x squared minus 7. And then you have x squared minus 1. So this would factor into 2x squared minus 7 times x squared plus 1. All right. But again, when we first learned how to factor, the very first thing you want to look for is a common factor. So you scan all the terms first and see if there's a common factor that you could factor all of those out of all of those terms first. If there is, do that. So 24x to the third plus 39x squared plus 6x. All of these terms have a common factor of 3x. So I'm going to factor out the 3x first. And then I'd be left with 8x squared plus 13x plus 2. Now we have a trinomial in the middle. So we are going to see if that trinomial factors. So take the a times the c. So can you multiply to 16 and add to 13? So can something times something equals 16 and then add to 13? Well, the factors of 16 are 1 and 16, 8 and 2, 4 and 4. So no, that doesn't factor. So this would be the final factored form for this. So 3x times 8x squared plus 13x plus 2. That is as far as that one would factor. All right, let's look at the next one. 6x to the fifth plus 34x to the fourth plus 20x to the third. All of these look to be divisible by 2 and an x squared. So I'm going to factor out a 2x squared. And then we would have 3x to the, an x to the third. So 2x to the third is the greatest common factor. Then we would have 3x squared plus 17x plus 10. So let's take the a times the c. So can you multiply to 30 and add to 17? So can you multiply to 30 and add to 17? Well, the factors of 30 are 1 and 30, 2 and 15 will work. So positive 2 and positive 15. So we're going to be able to factor that. So we're going to keep the 2x to the third, and we're going to have 2 parentheses after that. So we have 3x squared plus 17x plus 10 that we need to factor. So break up that middle term. 3x squared plus 2x plus 15x plus 10. group together the first two, group together the second two, plus sign in the middle. So I can factor out an x, and I'd have 3x plus 2. I can factor out a 5, and I'd have 3x plus 2. So that trinomial would factor into 3x plus 2 times x plus 5. So we would have 2x cubed times 3x plus 2 times x plus 5. And that would be the completely factored form for that original trinomial. All right, factoring perfect square trinomials. You'll know something is a perfect square trinomial when you look at the three terms and the first term is a perfect square, so x times x, and the last term is a perfect square, so 5 times 5. You'll know you'll have a perfect square trinomial when that works out. So if you were to go and factor this, we would factor like normal. So we need two numbers. There's no a this time, so I need two numbers that multiply to 25 and add to 10. So what multiplies to 25 and adds to 10? What happens when you have a perfect square trinomial is those numbers will be the same. We have a 5 and a 5. So when I go to factor x squared plus 10x plus 25, I get x plus 5 times x plus 5, or it ends up being x plus 5 squared. All right, let's look at another example. So y squared is y times 1, and then that c term, 81, is 9 times 9. So this should end up being a perfect square trinomial if it factors. So can you multiply to 81 and add to negative 18? Yeah, it's negative 9 and negative 9. So when this ends up factoring, you get y minus 9 times y minus 9, or it's y minus 9 squared. All right, the next one, 4x squared is the same as 2x times 2x, and 9y squared is 3y times 3y. And so if we go to factor this, we have 4x squared plus 12x squared plus 9y. So if I went to factor it like normal, 4 times 9 is 36, and then I need to add to 12. So what multiplies to 36 and adds to 12? It would be 6 and 6. So 4x squared plus 12xy plus 9y squared. If I break up that middle term, I get 6xy and 6xy. And so group the first two, group the second two, plus sign in the middle. And so I can factor out a 2x, and I'd be left with 2x plus 3y. And then I can factor out a 2x, and I'd be left with I can factor out a 3y. And I'd be left with 2x plus 3y. And so my two parentheses are 2x plus 3y and 2x plus 3y. So this ends up being 2x plus 3y squared. So now let's look at those three examples. X squared plus 10x plus 25. When I factored that, I'd get x plus 5 squared. Now notice, x squared is x times x, 25 is 5 times 5, and I ended up with x plus 5 squared. In y squared minus 18y plus 81, I got y times y and 9 times 9. That ends up being y minus 9 squared. 4x squared plus 12xy plus 9y squared. The 4x squared was 2x times 2x. The 9y squared was 3y times 3y. And so when I factored it, I ended up with 2x plus 3y squared. So you can either do perfect square trinomials, so you can factor the normal way that we've learned how to factor, or there's the little trick to it. So let's look at 25x squared plus 25xy plus 4y squared. So 25x squared is 5x times 5x. 4y squared is 2y times 2y. And so if I go to factor this, let's see if it ends up being 5x plus 2y squared. So if I took 25 times 4, I'd get the 100. So can I multiply by to 100 and add to 25? Well, the factors of 100 are 1 and 100, 2 and 50, 4 and 25, 5 and 20. So the two numbers that I want are 5 and 20. So I have 25x squared plus 5xy plus 20xy plus 4y squared. So group the first two, group the second two. And I would have 5x, and then it would be 5x plus y. And then we can factor out a 4y, and I'd be left with 5x plus 2y. Oh, factor out of 4, just kidding. That would be 2, that would just be y. And it worked, so we would have 5x plus y times 5x plus 4y. So this time, it didn't factor like a perfect square trinomial. So you've got to be careful. It won't always work the way that you want it to work. So just know that sometimes it'll be the trick and sometimes it won't. So maybe factoring the long way is in your best interest each time. All right, we have 12x to the third minus 84x to the second plus 147x. Again, your very first step on any factoring problem should be to pull out the common factor. All of these are divisible by 3 and x. And then we would have 4x squared minus 28x plus 49. And so notice we have 4x squared minus 28x plus 49. 4x squared is 2x times 2x. 49 is 7 times 7. So maybe this will factor the nice way. Or we could take 4 times 49. So we could take the a times the c. And we get 196. So can I multiply to 196 and add to negative 28? So the factors of 196, that would add to 28. So 196 divided by, let's try 16. 196 divided, 196 divided by 12. 196 divided by 14. So 14 and 14 would work. So positive 14 and positive 14. So notice, since those two are the same, it's going to factor like a perfect square trinomial. So it'll be 3x. And then it'll be 2x minus 7 squared. But let's just prove that. So 4x squared minus 28x plus 49. This would break up into 14x and 14x. So we have 4x squared minus 14x plus 49. Group, plus sign in the middle. And we would get 2x, and then we would have 2x minus 7. And then we would factor out the minus 7. And we would have 2x minus 7. So we would have 2x minus 7, 2x minus 7. All right. So again, we learned how to factor trinomials of the form ax squared plus bx plus c. Your homework is 7.3 and 7.